My name is Jacqueline Tattrie. I am with the center right now for my practicum for my master's in social work with a specialization in clinical work with groups, families, and individuals. And yeah, it's an honor to be here presenting to you guys today.
Thank you, Jackie.
Hi, my name is Danielle Kluski. I'm a bereaved parent and the vice chair of the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Board, as well as the director of operations with the Pregnancy and Infant Loss. So pretty much that means I do a variety of different roles and work very closely with Aditi to provide supports for our community as they journey through grief and loss.
Yes, we work very close together. It's a good thing we like each other. We would like to know who is here with us today, just briefly. If you're not comfortable putting your camera on, that's totally okay. But would you go ahead and just unmute yourself and just say your name and maybe where you're joining us from? And I have 3 of you, so if either of you want to let us know.
Hey,
hi.
No.
Oh. Everybody at the same time now.
So why don't we do Celine, if that's okay, and then Clarissa?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Celine and I'm in Calgary.
Awesome, thank you, Celine. Go ahead, Clarissa.
I'm Clarissa and I'm from Northern Alberta.
Wonderful, thank you for being here. And Amy, would you like to share where you're joining us from? No obligation. Okay. Oh, there we go. Oh, I couldn't see all of that.
Did it work?
There we go. Yes, I can
Oh,
hear
good. So I'm Amy and I'm joining in from Calgary as well.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, wonderful. So again, this is interactive, so we will be asking you to participate in ways that you feel comfortable. And yes, again, I'm just gonna say one more time, if you feel like having your camera up, please do so. But if you are in your pajamas and if it's that kind of day, that's okay as well. Okay, we'll move over to our next slide there. Oh, we have somebody else joining in. Maybe we'll see if we can. Oh, hi, Janelle. We were just introducing ourselves and saying where we are joining from. Do you feel comfortable in letting us know where you're joining us from?
Hi, yes, sorry. I was
okay.
A little late.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm from Calgary. I'm a social work student.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. You didn't miss much, just the introduction so far, so not to worry. Okay, so Jackie, if you can do our land acknowledgement, please.
Yes, of course. So we also reside in Calgary, so this land acknowledgement reflects that. So in spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the territories of the traditional caretakers of this land. The Stoney Nakoda, the Tsuut'ina, the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, and the Métis Nations of Region 3, as well as all the people who make their home in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to begin our time with a grounding meditation. Grief and loss and mental health topics are hard, and so we just want to make sure that we are grounding ourselves in this space and in this time together. So you can choose to participate if that feels right for you, or you can just ignore my voice and just do your own thing for the next 2 to 3 minutes. But if you do join us, you can just listen to my voice and follow along. So if you can just get your body as comfortable as you can in this moment. There's no right way to sit or lay, so you can lay down, you can sit, whatever feels right for you. And if it feels safe for you to close your eyes in the space that you're in, you can just gently allow your eyes to close. And if it doesn't feel right to close your eyes, you can just lower your gaze so that you're not distracted. And we're just going to take a moment to fully arrive in this time, in this space here together. So we're going to start by taking a nice breath in. And just exhale. Just becoming grounded in this moment, in this space. Just feeling your body against whatever it is that you're seated or laying on. Just feeling the points of support that your body is feeling. And just letting the weight of your body sink further into that support. So just letting go, allowing the surface of whatever it is you're seated or laying on to hold you in this moment. And if thoughts are coming in, that's totally normal and expected. Just bring your awareness back to my voice as best as you can. Now, if it feels right for you, I invite you to just turn gently inward into your breath. So just noticing where you're experiencing your breath most fully in your body. So for some people, that might be their nostrils, their chest, or maybe their abdomen. Wherever you're feeling it, just bring your awareness to that place. You're not trying to change or manipulate your breath. You're simply becoming connected to how your body is breathing in this moment. And again, if it feels right for you, we're just going to take a couple breaths here together. So a nice breath in. And just letting go. And another breath in. And releasing even further. In this moment and in this space, you are safe and you are supported. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and we will begin. Thank you.
Today, this workshop will look at connecting through commonalities, the grief recovery model, grief and loss, and peer support through empowerment. As Aditi shared, we'd love to hear your stories as we progress through today's workshop. Feel free when you are comfortable to share as much or as little as you would like, as well as if you would like to use the chat function, feel free to use that, as we will be monitoring that throughout the workshop as well.
So in order to find commonalities, we're going to just ask a few questions. You can either reply in the chat saying yes, you can use the reactions to put up a thumbs up or hand, or we can just talk as a group once I'm done going through the questions. So the first one that we're going to ask is, have you ever lost your job unexpectedly?
So again, if you feel comfortable, okay. So Celine says no. I say yes, I have. Or Danielle said yes. Jackie, have you?
I have.
You have not. Anybody else like to either thumbs up, thumbs down for yes or no? Clarissa, I haven't.
Okay.
Okay.
Just give another moment here if Amy and Janelle want to chime in. And if not, that's okay. Okay.
No, I haven't. Sorry, guys. I'm just doing this on my phone.
Oh
No.
yeah, that's okay. And yeah, feel free to just speak. We love, like I said, we love seeing faces and hearing real voices. So you have not, Amy. Okay.
Perfect.
No.
So the next question we're going to ask you is, have you ever lost an item that was important to you, such as a toy, as you were a child?
Yes. I lose things all
Yes.
the time that unfortunately are important to me.
Amy?
Go ahead, Amy.
Same. Yeah, I was just going to say same, often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Terrible habits.
And it's always the important things that we lose. It's so
Always.
hard. And Janelle says, I don't think so. And Clarissa said, I don't think so either.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken a day off for mental health reasons?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Danielle, have you taken a day off for mental health?
Yes, a few.
Yes. So Celine says no. Janelle says yes. Oh, Celine says, oh, yes, actually. And Clarissa says yes. And Janelle says yes. So we all have done that. Good for us.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us, everyone. Has your daily routines or relationships been impacted by COVID-19 thus far?
Oh, yes.
Every day.
Yes,
Yes.
very much so.
Yeah, everybody's
Yes, from Janelle. Celine, yes. Oh, Clarissa, drastically. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel that drastically. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Amy.
Yes, very much.
Very much so. Yeah.
Very much so, yes.
Have you ever experienced the loss of a loved one?
So a loved one can be anybody that you held dear. Pets, family, anything. So yes.
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 Yes, sad face. Yes, Janelle. And Clarissa, yes. Celine, yes. Go ahead, Amy.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that with us today.
Sorry, guys. 1 second here. I've got some technology issues. So this shows that, so connecting through commonality shows that we are not alone. Hearing stories from each one of us and from your peers also helps reduce the isolation that somebody may feel. The circumstances through grief and loss can be different, but how we experience it is where we may find the similarities. We do not have all the same experiences, but we still can connect through those experiences.
And it was really interesting to see with all of our answers. So there was a couple where unanimously it was yes or no. For the job loss one, Danielle and I had, and the rest said no. But it still showed me that I wasn't the only person that had. Right. And with job loss, there's a lot of complex emotions that come around that. So it was really nice to know that I wasn't the only person who'd experienced that. Okay, so this is a really wonderful quote that we wanted to share. We are taught how to acquire things, not what to do when we lose them. So in this society, we are taught, get a house, get a car, get a job, get a partner, have a child. But what happens when we lose our job? What happens when we get a separation or a divorce from our partner? What happens if there's a death of a child or we don't end up having children? No one teaches us how to move through that. So we acquire. And inevitably, when we acquire things, we are bound to lose those things at some point. And so oftentimes when we are, as people, and we've been growing up, especially in this culture, we are not taught how to grieve. So we are taught how to acquire, but when we lose, we're not taught how to move through that loss experience. It's almost like, and I'm going to ask the group, so feel free to unmute yourself and just speak and answer. But if I was to say, in the room that you're in, I want you to paint the room that you're in. What tools do you need to paint that room so that you get it right? What tools would you need to paint that room? And anybody can share. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Painter's tape.
Painter's tape, yeah. Okay, so you need painter's tape. What else would you need?
Clarissa says ladder and paintbrush.
Ladder or paintbrush, yeah.
Paint.
Paint, yeah, we need paint.
Celine says roller.
Roller, yeah. Okay. So we all know very clearly what we need to paint a room. Now, if I asked you, what do you need? What are the tools to move through a grief experience? None of us have been taught that. And the tools that we have been given are these here, which we have here from the grief recovery method, is we are told 6 major lies when we grieve. And these lies, these myths, actually become the tools that we end up using when we're moving through a grief experience. And they're not helpful. So grief, as defined by the grief recovery method, is grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or the change in a familiar pattern of behavior. So it's not only death that can ignite a grief and loss experience. It can be anything. Like we all said, oh my gosh, COVID-19, drastic changes. That is a grief and loss experience. And growing up, we're told 6 major myths about the way that we grieve. And these myths become our tools, like I said. One of those is don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Can anybody relate? And when you experienced any type of loss, was there a messaging around you that you shouldn't feel bad? Yeah, for me, for sure. And if anybody wants to share in the chat or even unmute yourself and share, please go ahead at any point through this. Celine said, no, really, not really. Okay, that's good. I'm glad that that wasn't your experience. So don't feel bad can look like a number of different ways. It can look at like, for example, when you're a child or you have a child and they lose their favorite stuffed animal, the one that they sleep with, the one that they carry around, and they lose it. And there's tears. Unconsciously, as parents, we sometimes might tell that child, don't feel bad, it's okay. You're okay, it's okay. Right? We might not actually say don't feel bad, but to not allow our child to cry due to that loss is actually sending that message that they shouldn't feel bad. And then number 2 is replace the loss. So in that example of the child losing their stuffed animal, oh, stop crying, you're okay. I'll get you another one. They don't want another one. They wanted that one. That was the stuffy that they had the relationship with. Oftentimes we're told to grieve alone, right? So don't let anyone see you grieving. Grief is uncomfortable. Do it privately. Right? I don't know, growing up, that was my experience, seeing my parents. I never saw my parents grieve. I never did. Even for funerals and stuff, they never brought us as kids. We were never included in that ritual. Just give it time. This one is a really big myth. How many people have heard time heals all wounds?
Many times.
Yeah, many times. Yes, Celine says yes. And that's simply not true. That's a myth. Time does not heal all wounds. Time changes your relationship with grief, but it does not heal all wounds. Our relationship with grief changes as time goes on. It gets different, but it doesn't mean that it goes away. It doesn't mean that it heals it. So be strong for others. Ooh, that's a big one. That is a big one. Lots of people. I don't have time. I don't have time to grieve. I cannot show that I am sad that grandma died because I don't want to, I need to be strong for my mom, right? Or my dad, or I can't be upset that my father-in-law has died because I need to be strong for my partner. And then keep busy. Oh goodness. Grieving people are the busiest people you will ever meet. Their houses will get renoed. They will, the busiest people and the finest people. Like if you say, how are you? I'm fine. Look how fine I am. I know how to paint a room. I was given those tools. So that's what I'm going to do. this me? Sorry, I'm.
It is you.
So sorry about that. How have these myths impacted your life? So did you identify with any of those myths? And have they impacted the way that you moved through a grief experience of your own? And you can put in the chat, you can unmute and say.
I feel like all of those are actually what I did. That it wasn't exterior people telling me that, but it was actually what I was telling myself and doing. I was keeping myself busy. I was telling myself it'll be okay over time.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing, Celine. Thank you so much for saying that, because it often isn't the other people telling you this. It's what we observe, and then it becomes the tools in which we move through grief, unconsciously even, not realizing that. When I first saw those myths, I was like, whoa, this is life-changing for me, because I have done every single one of those. Thank you for saying that, Celine. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Okay. We can move on. Yeah. So we would like to share. Oh, there's someone who, sorry, chatted or in the chat box.
I think Danielle was going to say that I was going to read the slide, but you go right ahead.
Yeah, no, someone just commented in the chat. So it says, I have definitely experienced all of those, especially being busy. I've never thought about not having the tools, but having the tools to paint a room. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we need tools. We as people, we need tools. And that's the interesting thing, is we're all going to experience grief and loss. So why are we not given the tools for that? Not everyone's going to paint a room.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so here is where we would love to share our stories. There is great power in connection in sharing our story. As you're sharing your story, if you can keep in mind and maybe even share how those myths maybe impacted the way that you moved through your experience of loss. You can share you don't have to share. If you would like to just briefly even put it in the chat, that's okay. And if you do share, we're not sharing for a lot of time, like maybe just a minute, just a snapshot of what your story is. And our team can get us started if that makes everyone more comfortable.
Yeah.
All right, team, let's do it. I don't want to go first because I already been talking. So Danielle or Jackie, team.
Sure, I can go. Not just like myself experiencing these myths, but also seeing my family go through these myths. We just recently lost my grandfather in March, right when COVID restrictions locked everything down in Calgary, and our grieving process was completely changed and altered. And I think we didn't know how to process it. So our ideas were like, you keep busy, how do we keep my grandma busy? Because now she's alone, who can go over there? And although that's very supportive, but it was more with the intention of she's alone. So how do we help her keep busy? And then just giving it time. There was always that impression that time heals and it gets easier. And that was kind of placed on my grandmother as well, that, don't worry, it's really hard now, but later it won't be as hard. But how do we define that for her, and how do we put that on her? It's not up to us to define how much time it's going to take to heal, or if that even it's going to get easier with time. So it was interesting to see these myths for the first time, because I was like, oh no, I've done these, but I've also said them, and I've had to learn, and it's been a process of my own.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Jackie. Go ahead, Danielle.
I have a very long experience with grief. I've lost grandparents at young ages. I have lost other family members that I was very close to. But the most recent area where grief really impacted my life was 9 years ago with the passing of my daughter. It really threw me for a loop because I did each one of those myths, as well as with those myths came people who were very kind to say things like, well, you can try for another one, you're still young, all these other things. And it was like, but I'm grieving. So what I did is I put the grief on the back burner for almost 7 years because it was just easier to do the grief myths than to actually deal with the situation at hand.
Yeah, so true, so true. So it feels easier, but in the long run, it's not. I, like Danielle, have had lots of experiences with grief. I've lost grandparents. I've lost like intimate relationships. I've lost health with chronic illness, and that's a really big loss experience that many people don't recognize. And then, of course, I myself, I experienced 2 pregnancy losses before I had my living child, which led me to this work. And yeah, I did all of those things. So when I lost intimate partners when I was younger, what did I do? Tried to replace it, right? When I lost my first pregnancy, all I wanted to do, just get pregnant again. Get pregnant again, this is gonna solve it. When I got pregnant again, oh my goodness, that did not solve it. It made it way worse. And I was super busy. Oh my goodness. I like redid my room. I did that, like just busy. Anything to not actually deal with the grief. And also this was what I was taught. So I thought that was dealing with the grief. Turns out it wasn't. Would anyone like to share their story? And again, you can put it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and share it. And if you don't feel comfortable, that's okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to share mine.
Thank you, Amy.
If that's okay. So I'm just recent in my experience. Well, I've had grandparents lost in the past, but for me, I just recently lost my daughter at 36 weeks. She was stillborn this past October. And I find myself doing all of those things right now, keeping myself busy, feeling I need to be strong. I have a little 2-year-old. I'm not really allowing myself to fully grieve. And it's kind of enlightening seeing you say those as coping techniques, because I'm very, very guilty of having done that myself so far.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your story. And yes, how these myths impact us all. Would anybody else like to share?
I'm actually in it right now. I lost my son 2 weeks ago after 19 weeks of pregnancy. And yeah, trying to figure things out and actually trying to figure out, what does grieving mean? Like, what are you supposed to do? Am I supposed to lock myself up in a dark room and cry all day? Is that me grieving? Or, yeah, I was doing the myth as thinking like, that's me grieving, right? But it's not, then what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you, Celine. Anybody else want to share? Okay. Thank you all for sharing.
Janelle just wrote in the chat.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I will read that. I've had many experiences of loss, both people very close to me, grandparents, father-in-law, and a pregnancy, as well as 4 nieces or nephews, and hopes and dreams that I had for my life. Thank you very much for identifying that. Hopes and dreams are a huge grief and loss experience. Keeping busy has definitely been a coping strategy, and also being strong for my kids or my husband and not allowing myself any room to think about grieving. I've had the benefit of spending the last 4 years being forced to work through that unprocessed grief through life circumstances. Thank you. One thing I want to say is that all of you showed up. All of you showed up to this workshop. So as much as we're saying, you know, we're not going through it or we haven't gone through it, you showed up today. So I think that's deeply courageous.
So now that we've been able to share some of the stories that have impacted our life and the grief and loss that we've experienced, we want to put it out for another reflection and just ask, how do you feel hearing these other stories that people have shared? And do you feel any connection to any story in particular, or do you have any feelings that come up when you hear these stories? We would love to hear that.
I want to share that you all gave me goosebumps because I resonate with what everybody has shared. As somebody who experienced loss 9 years ago, Celine, I was with you. I was like trying to decide, was it healthy for me to cry in a dark room, or was it healthy for me to paint my whole house? And as I continue to go through the journey, there are times where I still feel like I want to be in a dark room, and there's other days where I still want to be busy. But I know that every day I'm showing up to do some work. So when I'm being busy, it's okay for me.
I think one thing that really resonated with me was what Janelle said about the loss of hopes and dreams. I think we have like a clear definition of what loss is, like when it's a person or a pet. But when it comes to losing hopes and dreams and expectations and all that in your life, I think we don't realize that maybe we're even grieving those kinds of losses. And I think that was really important, just especially with COVID, just changing our lives drastically every single day. And I'm sure there's plenty of you that are having a year that you didn't expect, and maybe it's okay and maybe it's not. But I think recognizing the various levels of grief and loss in our lives is so essential.
Yeah, thank you. Would anyone else like to share how it felt hearing other people's stories? And you can put in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself if you're comfortable with that.
If you need time to type as well, we can always read it later.
Celine said, I'm not alone, and I think Amy has just unmuted herself.
Yeah, I was just gonna basically say the same thing, knowing that I'm not alone, and really not knowing how to properly grieve and what's the right approach, more or less, to how to you know, get through something so traumatic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's how I felt when I was hearing everyone's story. Is that like, I'm not alone, and yeah, there's just such power. Again, yeah, goosebumps, because it's a really powerful knowing when you know you're not alone.
So we'll just move into the next section, just focusing on some grief and loss, and we'll delve into that a little bit deeper now.
So types of loss, like we've shared, and through discussion, we've shared and touched on some of these, but some of the types of loss can look like job loss of financial security, loss of your home, anticipatory loss.
Which is what was identified, right? Those hopes and dreams.
Yeah. Spousal loss, parental loss of a pet.
Cumulative.
Thank you. Accumulative loss and child loss. Does anybody have any other losses that they think that we could add to here?
Or questions? Like cumulative loss is like exactly what was identified, right? Losing pregnancy and hopes and dreams, that's like a cumulative loss. Or losing your job and then losing your identity because that's the job that you've had for your adult life. Those are kind of cumulative losses. Oh, it's a hard word to say. I think we can move on, Danielle.
So when we talk about different types of child loss, we look at child loss at the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center as is very encompassing. So when we talk about child loss, it can be that child that is, we talk about it as a child that's from gestational through your pregnancy right through until they're could be 5, 18, 75, as long as you're a parent and you've lost a child, that is what we're talking about when we talk about child loss. There's no right or wrong space within child loss, and child loss, whether it's 45 years later or at conception, it's still a loss. So when we talk about child loss at the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center in relation to pregnancy, we talk about, oh my goodness, sorry. Ectopic pregnancy, chemical pregnancy, miscarriage, stillbirth, losses of multiple prenatal diagnosis, neonatal loss, which is within the first 28 days, I believe. Mm-hmm. Infertility, that includes failed IVF and failed IUI. We also look at loss to include missed adoption, loss through surrogacy, and the sudden infant death syndrome, as well as the sudden child death syndrome as well. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on that? You can put it in the chat.
Yeah, like if you need more clarity, like loss of a multiple is loss of a twin or a triplet birth. Prenatal diagnosis is getting a prenatal diagnosis that's not compatible with life. Infertility, we put infertility. So we do see families who are struggling with infertility but haven't had a quote unquote pregnancy or infant loss, because the infertility journey has lots of grief and loss. Again, that anticipatory loss is very heavy in the fertility journey. Missed adoption, loss through surrogacy, all of those are loss. We really allow the clients that access our supports to define loss for themselves. So if you are feeling like you're struggling with loss in your life, in your parenting journey, we are the space that will support you. So loss affects your physical, mental, behavioral, spiritual, social, loss affects everything. This is one thing that I think some people don't quite fully understand, or not that they don't understand, but I don't think our society fully supports this notion that loss is not only a mental and physical impact. Loss affects our behavioral. It affects our spiritual. So examples of this. So let's talk specifically pregnancy, infant loss here. It affects physical oftentimes, because oftentimes that loss occurs in the body. It's obviously a physical loss. The mental, so of course it impacts our mental health. That's why we're here. Behavioral. So is there an example that anyone can think of how it impacts behavioral? I can just say it. So behavioral examples are, okay, well, I'm somebody now who is busy all the time. I'm renovating all the time. That's behavioral. Or I'm going to numb out. So I'm going to drink all the time, or I'm going to eat all the time, or I'm going to watch Netflix all the time. Or I'm going to cheat on my partner because we're grieving differently. And I don't know how to talk to my partner. So I'm going to find that love and stability, or that moment of just release and with someone else. Spiritual. When we experience loss, we question our spirituality, and it impacts our spirituality. So for people who have a belief in what they believe in faith, if they have a faith-based belief, oftentimes they'll say, well, now I don't know what I believe, because my belief, my God, my universe, my whatever would not have let this happen. Or if you didn't have a belief, well, what do I do now? Where do I fit in? Social, I mean, I think all of us can can agree that social is deeply impacted by loss. I mean, look at COVID. COVID-19 has created a huge social impact on everybody. We've had relationships drastically change. When I experienced my losses, I had so many social impacts, friends that I couldn't see because I was triggered by their children or their own pregnancies, friends that didn't want to see me because they didn't know how to move through my loss, lots of social impacts. And then cultural. So if you are a person within a who identifies within a different marginalized community, you might have different beliefs about what loss means and the rituals that go around that. And it could actually affect how you move forward, depending on what those beliefs are. So lots of impacts. It's not only physical and mental. There's like a lot of impacts. Is there any questions about that? Or anyone want to say anything?
So we're going to move into focusing on isolation and grief. So when it comes to experiencing a loss, the grief that is felt can lead individuals to feel very isolated and disconnected from their loved ones, their community, like we talked about before with the social and cultural and all that. They also may feel like it may be better to grieve alone, like the mess we talked about earlier, or that individuals may not understand the grief that they're feeling, or maybe that they don't understand because people are grieving differently than them. So from our own experience and what we've read, we know that connection support is vital. So one way that we can reduce that isolation during grief is leaning on others for support, especially when those others have commonalities that we can connect to. But yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more throughout the presentation.
We can flip forward there.
So these are some quotes that we're going to share some quotes about loss and grief through this time. I'm grieving and upset all the time, and sometimes it feels like my partner is heartily bothered. Has anybody experienced that? We're a small group today, so.
Yes, I for sure have.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Amy, sorry, I couldn't hear you there, Amy.
Yes, I have experienced that as well.
Yeah, and we have another yes in the chat box as well. Very common for couples to grieve differently.
The next one is, I just feel so alone, and sorry, I'm going to start this again. I just feel so alone, and I feel like since I have a daughter, I can't grieve because I have a child. Mm-hmm. This quote resonated with me so much.
I definitely resonate with it as well, with my 2-year-old.
Yeah. It's that, and if we tie that in, what that is that underneath that is the myth of don't feel bad. Yeah. Don't feel bad. You have a child. Yeah. Not helpful.
Just making sure. I'm so angry and upset all the time, and I'm completely overwhelmed. I sometimes think about ending it all.
Yeah.
This is so strong for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have felt like that. I felt like that in my grief of my pregnancy losses. I felt like that at times during this COVID-19 pandemic. Not that I'm suicidal, but it just sometimes feels overwhelming, and I just feel tired from carrying it all.
Yeah. I have felt this so much over the last 9 years, more so than ever before. Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, I'll share that it's the anger that was really interesting, because I never expected to feel angry all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That anger bubbles up when we're told not to feel bad.
Yeah.
or when we like push it down. Because you know what? Losing something deeply loved is going to make us feel bad. We're allowed to feel bad. So that anger will bubble up if we don't get the space to acknowledge that. Okay, we'll flip forward. Okay, so grief, isolation, and COVID. I won't spend a ton of time here because we've been chatting about it throughout, but the impact of dealing with a bereavement compounded with feelings of worry about external situations can mean that feelings of grief aren't fully expressed. So COVID-19 pandemic has own layers of guilt, and if we haven't dealt with the grief and loss that a bereavement has brought, it can just compound everything so much. So if we are grieving, which we all are, but if we're grieving losses during COVID-19, it further compounds the complexity of what moving forward looks like. So we wanted to just chat about, and I know this is your slide, Jackie, but we just wanted to chat about, because the question is what do we do? What do we do here, right? One of those biggest myths that what we talked about is grieve alone, right? And we saw the power in sharing our story. We all were like, okay, I'm not alone. I've been doing this work in this community with the pregnancy and infant loss community for the last 5 years. And what I know to be true is that there is a powerful untapped tool in our society, and that is connection and peer support. We were never meant to grieve alone. So you can go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks, that was beautifully said. So there's just 3 quotes that we thought really summed up what peer support is. So the first one is just reflecting, saying, peer support is a supportive relationship between people who have lived experience in common. Peer support is about providing all the tools beside medication, the tools for the other 80% of your life. And the last one says, the commonality may not be in relation to a specific challenge or illness, but rather the struggle and the emotional pain that can accompany the feeling of loss and or hopelessness. So for me, that last quote really resonated, just because it shows that like we've talked about before, we don't have to have exact experiences to have commonalities, but we can relate to other people through that feeling of pain or the struggle or the feelings of loss and hopelessness. And then that can allow us to be a peer support to somebody else, or have a peer support for ourselves.
Yeah.
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, that's totally fine. I'm sorry about that. I thought this was my slide. I wanted to mention that one of the most healing things, and I'm going to be honest here, when I first experienced my loss, first of all, there was nobody in my circle that had experienced loss. So I really felt like I was alone. And I didn't go anywhere. I didn't join groups. I didn't do any of those things because the ones at the time that were available didn't quite resonate with me. Building my coaching business, building the community here in Calgary, building the center, I've been connected with some of the most powerful, most healing relationships that I've ever encountered. Danielle and Danielle has been so healing for my own journey. There's other key people, peers that I've connected with that have just been a game changer. So for those of us in the workshop today who feel like you're alone, know that you're not, and there is a community of support here. We do a lot of peer support work at the center. These next couple of slides are more for if you were to show up in a grief space for someone else, which I'm not sure is quite relevant to who is in attendance today. But I think that when you're looking for a peer support space, you want it to be somewhere that's non-judgmental, someone that has a genuine care, empathetic, warm and positive, a regard for that, for you and your personal internal resources. And a good peer person isn't going to make their story, your story about them. They're going to say, I can relate to the feelings that you've had, but they're not going to take over. And I think that's really key. So as you're like looking for those peers to really connect with, making sure that like, these are some of the things that they bring to the table for you. I just wanted to flip it a little bit there, Jackie and Danielle, sorry.
No, that's perfect. I think that is like reflection of what we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I think we can probably move through this.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah. I think this part's really key to peer support. Having a space where you receive empathy and validation, knowing that it's okay to not be okay. You don't have to show up any way other than how you are in that moment. So having a space that acknowledges acknowledges the significance and importance of your emotion, your thoughts, and your situation, making it safe and provide invitations for those expressions. Not using sentences that say there's no need to feel guilt. Not trying to diminish your grief because it's making the other person feel uncomfortable. So when you find those people, and if you don't have those people, please connect with the center. When you find those people, really hold them close. In a grief and loss experience, again, we're not meant to grieve alone, and the peer support, people that can really relate to the experience, is life-changing. I think we can probably flip over the slides of the language part too, because we're also getting close on time, and I don't think this is as relevant. There we go.
So different ways when you're so sorry, I'm going to change this up a little bit. Ways that I found, and that Aditi and I in the center, we find that people who are looking for peer support connect right now through COVID is we use things like telephone calls, video calls, writing letters, going for walks outside. You can ask for the support you need. And through the center, we provide the support the way you want it, whether it's through tech support or you want somebody to call you and talk to you on the phone. We can help you with finding those supports. Or if there's support people in your family, these are ways that you can ask for them to show up for you. So for myself, my sister right now is in a very tough grieving part of where she's in a very tough piece of her grieving journey. And so I show up for her by sending skip the dish cards. I show up for her by knowing when she might be tired on the end of the week and sending her and her children some ice cream, because I know that they like to get out and go for a walk and end it with ice cream. So my role for her is just to be there, to be present, and to know what would benefit her. So don't be afraid to ask for those things. If you really need a clean house during COVID, you can still ask for somebody to come in and help you clean your house.
Yeah. And I love this quote, something that is loved is never lost. I just love that quote. That's one of our board members, and just a beautiful quote. Okay, we can skip over this piece here. So this is, I think, the key takeaway that we would like for you to leave with is that this center was founded by myself. I consider Danielle at this point a co-founder as well. We are both bereaved parents. Our board is bereaved parents. Most of our practitioners are bereaved parents. Everything we do is because we want to create a space that understands the bereaved parent experience. We have over 70 volunteers with us now, all of which, or most of which, are bereaved parents. There's a whole community of support waiting to support you, to help us dismantle those myths. We are not meant to grieve alone. Pregnancy and infant loss and all of those other losses, the anticipatory loss, those losses that we don't feel like they're real losses, deserve to be supported. And so we connect people who've experienced pregnancy and infant loss to comprehensive and inclusive support offerings through each phase of the journey. The journey through loss is complex, and we know that not everyone heals in the same way. So we offer a bunch of different types of support that Danielle is going to share. And I really want to highlight our peer programming. So yeah, go ahead, Danielle, you can share.
So our services include a national pregnancy support hotline, which we will give you the information on the next slide. We have seven different peer support groups, and we're going to be expanding that into those groups in 2021. We provide one-on-one peer support / mentoring. We can connect you with a mentor who's experienced loss, and you are able to connect with them over a period of time, whether that is a phone call or video chat. We also are very proud to be offering free initial grief counseling with Kirsten, who is a social worker. She can provide supports to everybody here in Alberta. So that's.
I just want to make sure that Clarissa didn't have something to say, because I thought I saw it unmute. Just want to make sure. Were you wanting to say anything? Okay, sorry, Danielle, just wasn't sure. Okay.
We offer grief and loss coaching with Aditi, who you've heard from her today. She is able to provide support worldwide. We also have alternative healing, which I think is probably one of the most interesting services the center offers. We have tarot card reading, we have Reiki, we have a reflexologist. When non-COVID time, we also provide acupuncture and massage therapy. And these are healing modalities that I personally would never have experienced had I not joined the center. I'm really been able to experience that spiritual piece of grief and looking at it from a different view. And as well as we are working towards education and outreach. And as promised, I'm going to leave this up for a little bit, but this is our pregnancy loss support line. You can text us or chat with us Monday through Sunday between the hours of 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Mountain Standard Time.
Mountain Standard Time. We have volunteers ready and willing to answer your chats or your text messages. They are mostly bereaved parents and will and provide a really nice way to connect in those times where you just need somebody to hear your story.
Yeah, this pregnancy loss support line was initially launched in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, because Danielle and I were thinking, how can we better support people during this time? How can we connect people to still understand that we're not alone, we're not alone. And this is what we created. And since that time, we've onboarded 60 volunteers who are peer mentors who understand and can relate to this journey. And it's all anonymous. And so if you ever need a space to vent, if you ever just need a space to say, like, nobody else is really, quote unquote, understanding where I'm at, these volunteers are there to support you. They will hold the space for you to vent. They will hold the space for you to get out the anger. They will just hold the space for whatever it is that you need in that moment. Super, super powerful. Anybody at any stage of loss can engage on this chat. So whether you've recently had loss, if it's been 10 years and you're only now moving towards your healing, if you are trying to conceive again, if you're pregnant again, or if you're parenting post-loss, at any point you can engage in this support offering, which is free and national, so across North America. And our chat on our website is obviously worldwide. We thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a little bit of something new in how we approach grief, what are some tools and that we are offering. So again, we didn't give you all of the tools to move through a grief and loss experience, but if you think about going back to that first example of how do we paint a room, one of the first things that we need is paint. So consider connection to peer support, that paint for you on your grieving journey. So that is our first offering and our tool. If you would like to learn more tools, connect with us. We are bereaved parents with open hearts who are waiting here to support you. So thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, anything that you would like to ask or anything that you would like to share before you leave, please let us know. And if you can just either say out loud one word on how you are feeling leaving today's workshop or put it in the chat. We always like to just check out with people before we leave, just so that we know where people are at leaving the workshop. So you can say the word or chat. I saw Amy, you came off mute. So did you want to say?
Yeah, I guess the first word that comes to my mind is hopeful, knowing I'm not alone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's going to tear me up because you're not. I'm going to tear up. Didn't expect that.
I might be crying already. It's fine.
Yeah, you're not alone, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to either say their word or post it in the chat? Or we would like for you to post it in the chat, just so we know where, like I said, where people are at leaving the workshop. We want everyone to feel cared for.
I'll share my word. My word is connected. Thank you for sharing your stories and allowing me to connect with other bereaved parents.
Somebody said interested. Another person said thankful. Those are so great. Such great words.
I'm feeling honored just to be able to hold space for a workshop like this and hear stories from others and having everybody who attended feel open enough to share what they're going through. It's an honor to hear those stories. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And my word is just deeply grateful. It is a privilege to do this work and to hold the space for your children, for your grief, for yourselves. The work that we do at the center is deeply sacred, and I'm so grateful and privileged to be able to do this with all of you. So thank you all for attending today, and please connect with us. We'd love to see you in our space.
Yes, thank you.